project became world famous because of one statement. The statement was, begin with why. You've got to begin with why. I can imagine that there are probably people in your organization right now that if you ask them, why do you do the job that you do, that the answer they're going to give you is directly tied to their paycheck, or it's going to be so vague that they're not exactly sure why they do what they do, other than it's the job description and that's why I'm here. But that's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned.
Think storytelling's just for bedtime? Nah, it's the secret sauce for business magic. Stuck in a rut with bland pitches and yawning clients? Enter Boost Your Business with StoryPower. 6 weeks of epic storytelling training. It's like leveling up in a video game but for your career. Master the art of narrative and watch connections blossom like a viral TikTok. Simple, impactful, and game-changing. Ready to transform your biz vibes? Dive in now and make storytelling your superpower.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPowerAcademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. The question, how do I get my team to care about my vision, has a couple of different answers. One of those answers I would answer with John Maxwell's statement. I'm not even sure he was the original one that said it, but I've heard it most from him. Nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. How do you get your team to care about your vision? Well, why don't you start with caring about them? But see, there's a lot more to it than that. I'm going to give you a tactical strategy, a very tactically implementable strategy. But first, I want you to understand why people don't care about your company's vision. And there's a couple of different reasons that it's true. The first of which is they don't know why they do what they do. Many people come to work in an organization, they show up, they punch the clock, so to speak, they type their time card in, they swipe their little card, whatever it is that says, I'm officially here. And yet, although they're physically officially here, they're not yet officially here. They're preoccupied, they're distracted, they brought the drama of the day with them. You can go back a few episodes and hear about the drama of my delivery driver. That has a huge impact in your workplace because it has a huge impact in the minds, in the emotions, in the thoughts, in the feelings of your workers. And if that mind, emotion gets out of whack, what they think with how they feel, yeah, that's called an attitude. When their attitude about their work is more focused on the drama that's going on at home or what they wish was going on at home, the thing that's absent from their life, the piece that's missing, so to speak, when their mind stays there when they show up at work, they're not getting the work done that you're paying for them to do. They're not going to accomplish the things that you've asked them to do because they can't. They're distracted. Their focus is in the wrong place, or their focus is on too many things at one time. So how do you get them to care about your vision? Well, the first thing you got to do is you've got to be a responsible human as a leader and recognize this human on my team is having a hard time. They're going through something that's creating an issue for them. It's creating a distraction for them. And that distraction is going to keep them from being focused on the ultimate outcome, and that is the success of my client. If my employee is distracted and my employee is not doing the work they should be doing to the level they should be doing, they're not meeting the standards, they're not working on time, they're not engaged with the dynamics of what's going on in our workplace, then the ability to service the customer as needed to provide the right product at the right time is not going to be present. So how do you get them to even care about your vision? The first thing, the very first step, is you have to care about them. You've got to be human enough to realize these workers, these teammates of mine, they're human as well. Sometimes they have bad days. How do you accommodate? How do you push beyond that? I was listening to a group call with the Grant Cardone group yesterday, And one of their top level guys said, on a regular basis, they will get a handful of assignments. Usually these are the top people, the top performers, the ones that are leading large teams. There are thousands, if not tens of thousands of people that work in the Cardone group. And they said on a regular basis, Grant will walk in and lob a grenade, figuratively, into the workspace. I need every job description, every payroll breakdown, every marketing campaign that your department has run in the last 30 days. I need it printed on my desk when I come in tomorrow morning. Okay, that's the kind of task that many organizations would say, that's going to take me 30 days to compile. No, you have the rest of the day. I mean, whatever you're doing today, I still expect that to be at the same level, but I want this on my desk when I come in the morning, and that might be 6 a.m. When are you going to get that work done? When you lead an organization that way, that kind of demand is a regular expectation. People in the organization operate with that sense of urgency. People in the organization expect little assignments like that to come up. The particular guy that was talking yesterday said there was a time that Grant came in and said, I want you to build a web page and a campaign and a lead system around this product. And the guy was like, we don't even sell that product. He's like, I know, make it anyway. So they built an entire lead system and a web page and a campaign around selling a $500,000 product. It's not even in the industry that they sell in. They gathered tens of thousands of leads from this, and then Grant came back and said, now figure out how to use those leads, because anybody willing to spend $500,000 on that can afford anything we offer them. So figure out what it is that we can offer those kind of people who have that kind of mindset, who are looking for that kind of product, and sell them something we do offer. All right. There's a word for that in the banking system, in the political system, in the world of high finance. It's called a stress test. And here's what it's not asking. It's not asking, can we actually sell a $500,000 project or product? Because they know they can. They've done it in the past. It's not asking, are people gullible enough on social media to buy that kind of product from this kind of company? It's not asking that either. Here's what it's asking. When put under pressure, can my team perform to the level of my expectations? Can they get done what I want done? That's a tougher question. But see, that question goes back to our question of the day for this podcast, and that is, how do I get my team to care about my vision? The vision wasn't to sell this oddball, off the mark, out of the blue product. The vision was to say, how nimble is my team? Can they execute if everything falls apart? I mean, right now we've got all kinds of conflict going on all over the world. Panama, the Straits of Hormuz, potential tsunami warnings on the West Coast, earthquakes in Russia, battle plans being drawn up by nations that hate us all over the planet. And simultaneously, we have salespeople who are going to come in and sit down at their desk today and attempt to sell a product, a service, an opportunity to someone else who's sitting there with the noise and the distraction of what's going on around the world in their mind. And add to that maybe a sick kid at home, or a special needs kid at home, or an ailing parent. And all of a sudden you've got an individual asked to do a job that has this over-the-top expectation with a curveball threw in, or as Grant's team says, throwing a live grenade into the mix. The daily expectations don't change. The quotas, the job description, those things don't go away just because there's a war, there's a fire, there's a hurricane, there's a tsunami, there's an earthquake. Those things don't change the expectations. How do we know? Well, because the goal at the end of the day for the organization is still the same. The goal at the end of the day, we still have numbers to meet, we still have clients to reach, we still have products to deliver, we still have services to deliver. And if we stop doing those things, then as an organization, we find ourselves in the middle of our own earthquake, our own tsunami, our own wildfire. And as an organization, now layoffs begin. So there's a double-sided tension for a leader of an organization like that. A, I need to know, can they pass the stress test? If all of this stuff hits at one time, how do we get through it? Can they get through it? Are they emotionally strong enough? Are they ready? Steve Siebold, for 30 plus years, has been teaching from the platform and in long-term consulting with companies a program he calls mental toughness. Well, this is what's required if you're an Olympic level or a national athlete, NBA, NFL, MLB, whatever it is. In order to achieve at that level, to play at that level, you've got to have the mental toughness that says, even if I'm injured, I'm going to play. Even if all the odds are stacked against me, I'm going to give it everything that I've got. And the ability to do that is a decision. It's a choice. So if the organization is stress tested and it knows that when those things come up, the employees are still going to rally around the organization, because in this time, while I'm on the clock, while I'm in this business, while I'm running the execution of my portion of this business, I have to give 110% toward that success. But that stress test will not be passed if the second strategy is not in place. And that is asking and answering the question, why do you do what you do? Yes, it's part of your job description. Yes, it's because of the execution that's necessary for the entire machine to work. You are a cog in the machine, and if you don't do what you're called to do, what you're tasked to do, what you're assigned to do, if you're not taking care of that, everybody else's work seems to be in vain. So that's part of your why. You get a paycheck from here. That's part of your why. The results that you deliver are instrumental to the organization. All of those are part of your why. They're part of the reason you even show up for the job. They're part of the reason you do what you're supposed to do when you get there. I get that. Here's what they're not asking and answering that for many organizations just seems to go completely unnoticed. We got to deal with the fact that they're human. They're going to come in the door with drama. They're going to have problems that you wish they left at home or left in the car or at least in the parking lot. But no, they came all the way to their desk with them. They've come all the way to that sales floor. They're out there on the floor talking to customers with all the drama that they should have left at home still in their lips. They're on deliveries meeting with your customers face to face. They're on the roof putting the shingles on. And all of the drama in their life is still dripping from everything that they do. And unfortunately, sometimes it impacts their work. Or they've come to work and they did manage to leave most of that behind, but now you as a boss, as a environment in the world, have this outside influence, this grenade lobbed into them, and so now they're dealing with that on top of that. And yet there's still one more area that, as a leader, you've got to be responsible to them, not for them, but to them. As a leader, you've got to understand what motivates them to begin with. And when there's a disconnect between what motivates that individual, that group of individuals, that team, your entire organization, when there's a disconnect between what motivates them and the purpose your organization exists for, they will lose sight of your vision. They'll walk away and abandon it. They'll silo themselves to the job description that they're paid for. This attitude, it begins to show up in phrases like, well, the minute you pay me enough to do that, I'm all over it. Or, how come so-and-so gets that raise and I didn't get that raise? We have the same job. Well, if I were in charge, it'd be more like, I see, all of these are phrases that when you go through the Attitude Hack course as a leader, you're going to begin to see them in everyday language within your workplace. They're already there. You've probably already heard them. There are hundreds of them that we've kind of correlated together to go, when you hear these grouped together, this is not just a one-off phrase. This is a permeating attitude that's already in your workplace. What are you going to do about it? Well, there's actually a solution to that that also marries together this other question: how do I get my team to care about the vision? It's a little answer called narrative. The narrative. The narrative in your organization is crafted by your leadership. Now, I'm not just talking about, although this does impact, I'm not just talking about your organizational mission statement. Many people craft that mission statement. They might even go a little further and craft a vision statement, and then they stop. And even if you put that on a memo and it goes out to everybody on a monthly basis, even if it's in the signature of your email and it goes out on a regular basis, or it's on the big posters on the wall. We've all seen them, right? These are the attitudes we expect you to have within the office. You can do that. It doesn't usually have the impact that driving the narrative, leading the narrative, crafting the narrative, and putting that narrative into your everyday conversation. The posters, they won't do that. The memos, not as effective. The sticky notes, the email signatures, all of those are good to reinforce and remind in a very subtle way, but the narrative has to start right here. It has to start in the way that you communicate with the people around you. And part of that narrative is driven by the ultimate leadership direction of the organization, the CEO, the board, whoever's driving the purpose that your organization exists. That group should have a firm hold on why do we as an organization do what we do? What is the ultimate outcome? And that, again, might be a vision statement or a mission statement, but it's also got to ask this one question that most people who struggle to get on board with the vision of the organization are still asking. It's the Simon Sinek question. It's the why question. And it's not just answered why, well, because I said so. Why? Well, because it's your job description. No. Why? Well, because this is how you get your paycheck. Well, all of those are true, but that's not the why we're looking for. The gap that we have to bridge is to get the team on board with the language, with the emotion, with the thoughts. Thoughts, feelings, that's an attitude. Thought, feeling, language, that's attitude engineering. As a leader, you've got to do that within your organization. But that thought, feeling, and language has to point to the greater why. What's the real why behind your organization? It's who you serve. It's your client. And when there's a gap between, well, this is my paycheck, this is my job description, this is what I was told to do, and this is how it benefits the customer. If there's no immediate correlation between those, if the dialogue doesn't exist, if the attitude isn't reinforced in everyday language in your organization, when that gap is there between me showing up and doing my job and the benefit we provide to the society, to the culture, to our customer, when that gap exists, the motivation of why is gone. Simon Sinek did a study several years back, and he said, one of the things we find with millennials, that gives you an idea how long ago it was, he said most of the millennials, they show up in a job, and within 3 to 6 months, they're already disillusioned, and they're what we would now call quiet quitting. He said when we began to survey thousands and thousands of employees, what we found was there were a lot of people in the former generations, Gen X, the boomers, who said, I come to work, I do my job, I expect after 25 or 30 years, I will retire. The company will reward me with a pension. I'll get my retirement, maybe I've got a 401k or Social Security, and at that moment I'm gonna kick back, put my feet up, and I'm done. I've worked my 30, I'm done. And that mindset morphed into, over a couple of generations and a few decades, morphed into, I want to be significant in this world. That's a huge shift. Because there are a whole lot of people who work 20, 30 years in the mailroom, 20, 30 years on the assembly line. All they did the entire work life was put fenders on bodies, put fenders on bodies, put fenders on bodies, put fenders on bodies. They could put a fender on a body in their sleep. They put fenders on bodies so long. Now maybe they were elevated, maybe they were given a pay raise, maybe they became the supervisor of people who put fenders on bodies, or maybe of the entire shop, but generally speaking, the job didn't change much in 30 years. That kind of loyalty from the company and that kind of loyalty by the employee, that was the classic thing in the boomer generation. In Gen X, that began to shift a little bit because in Gen X, it was when a lot of companies were able to say, hey, I can get this person younger, cheaper, to do the same kind of work. Now, I don't have to spend as much money. In fact, I can get 2 of them for the price of this guy who's about to retire, whose pension I'm about to pay. So if I let him go, give him a nice little severance package, but don't give him a retirement or a pension, I can let him go and put 2 people in place and get more work done. Cheaper. Why wouldn't I do that? That was a common experience in Gen X. And when the millennials came along, a lot of them said, I want to matter. And what happened in that phase was, and Simon talks about this, you can go look it up on YouTube. He talks about the number of people who would come into an organization, and 3 to 6 months in the organization, they're like, I've been here 3 whole months, not one raise, not one promotion, not one opportunity to do something grand and significant. And in the back of your head, you can almost hear that guy who's been there 10 or 15 years and he's had one raise, one promotion, a lateral move from one department to another. And you're thinking, 3 months? You're barely out of your 90-day trial period. We're not even sure we like you at this point, 3 months. Right? You're newer than the flowers in the flower bed. Right? 3 months. You want to be significant. You want to have a promotion. So there's a major conflict there. There's also a major disconnect between the way we've always done work and what this generation expected. They expected significance. They expected to have impact to people in the world. They had a major motivation of why. Why do I matter in the world? What will I accomplish for other people in this job? And if they couldn't see in their job description and their paycheck what that was, then any little disruption, like a stress test grenade thrown into the middle of the workplace, that was just too much. That was over the top. And then all of a sudden we moved into the I feel, I dramatize, I emote, I empathize with everything from the cat to the wallflowers, to the potted plants. They're too close to the sun. Don't you know that kind of plant will die like that? And now there's an emotional response to the fixtures in the building, the color of the cups on the floor 4. If you remember that reference. And it becomes a huge driving emotion of distraction, even in the microcosm of the workspace. The desk that I'm sitting at, my chair's too tall, my chair's too short, it's too soft, my back is tired. Companies renovated with ergonomics and spent hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions of dollars, making people comfortable at work. Why? For the same reason. They couldn't pinpoint their motivation. They couldn't figure out what it was that made them tick. They couldn't figure out what it was that attached the team member to the vision of the organization. And because they couldn't attach them, they just wouldn't stay. And if they did stay, they didn't work. I started studying this when I started writing Attitude Hack, and the program that I wrote before Attitude Hack was called The Power of Public Displays of Appreciation. And that program was based on what does it take to get an employee engaged? What does it take to let them know you belong here? We want you here. We want you to be a part of what we're doing. And there's a greater calling for you than just showing up, punching the time card, getting your check, and going home. There's something more that we as an organization do that demands your talent, your presence, your emotional well-being to be deeply engaged in that. And so at that time, I grabbed a book called The 5 Languages of Appreciation. And just a little reference point. He said, when appreciation misses the mark, each of us has a primary and secondary language of appreciation. Our primary language communicates more deeply to us than the others. If you don't know that about your team, as a leader, you can stress test them. As a leader, you can put high-level demands on them and see if they can keep up. You can replace them. You can have quotas and sales quotas and goals and things that they're supposed to accomplish in a certain period of time and push and push and push and push. But if you don't know what really makes them tick, their job satisfaction is very quickly going to plummet. It doesn't necessarily mean their performance will at the same time, but they're usually pretty closely tied. If, on the other hand, you just pick up a book as simple as the 5 Languages of Appreciation, here are the 5. Words of affirmation, tangible gifts, quality time, acts of service, and physical touch. Now, if you've got an HR department, physical touch, probably out of there. A handshake, perhaps, a side hug, maybe. Beyond that, keep physical touch out of the workplace. But acts of service, quality time, I can tell you there was a study done years ago. I'm trying to remember exactly who did the study. There was a conversation that came out. John Maxwell talked about it in one of his trainings. He said there was a company that decided, I want to reward my employees. I have not done anything since we started. We've seen exponential growth. We're putting more money in the bank than we ever have before. And I just want to say thank you to my employees. And so I rented a yacht and took them on a cruise. And I said, we're going to go for 7 days. It's no work, no conversation about work. This is all my thank you to you. You can bring your family. We've got plenty of space for everybody. Love to have you all join us. And there were a large number of people who said, that is the coolest thank you gift ever. They packed their bags, they packed their families, they went out on the yacht, they went for the cruise, they went to all the destinations, they had a blast. And there were a couple who said, you know, while I'm gone, my car is going to get repossessed. While we're gone on this cruise, they're going to foreclose on my house. While I'm gone on this cruise, my mom's going to be in the hospital getting a medical procedure that I'm not sure how we're going to pay for. Is there any chance that instead of me going on the cruise, you could just write me a check for the amount of the cruise? Because I could much more use the money than the cruise. All of a sudden, you have a reality check of the value of how you receive appreciation. See, that quality time, that acts of service, that tangible gifts, that words of affirmation difference suddenly becomes, is that how the team member wants to be appreciated? If it's not, you can lavish them with gifts that they don't care about, and you've done absolutely nothing. Ultimately, though, you've got to get on the same page. You've got to appreciate them in a way that they appreciate being appreciated. But you've also got to begin to change the dialogue in your workplace. What you say to them, how you treat them, how do you confirm to them that they belong, and then what does that mean to your customer? Look, the number of organizations where if you were to go into the organization and talk to people sitting at a desk doing a job, maybe they've got seniority, they've been here 4, 5, 6, 10 years. Maybe they've gotten multiple raises, they've had multiple opportunities, they've even worked in multiple departments. But if you were to ask them, what's the best result this organization provides for the people that it serves? If they can't answer that question, you've lost the narrative. They've lost sight of the vision. Their why is myopic. Their driving motivation is about them and their paycheck and their relationships in the office. And when they walk out of the office, they don't think about it. When they leave the job site, they're done with the customer. You've got to drive the narrative that helps everyone on your team to understand, who do we help as an organization? How do we help them? And how are they better off when we do? When that becomes the let me say that in English. When that concern becomes the common conversation, when everybody in your environment, everybody in your organization can say, that person's life is going to be better in this way, and this way because they've engaged with our organization. When they can answer that question, their revenue is going to go up, their life is going to be healthier, their physical body is going to be in a better shape, their relationships are going to be, if they can answer that question, they have your vision. They can quote your vision. They desire to live your vision. If you're still asking the question, how do I get my team to care about my vision? Talk more about your vision. Not just what the end goal is for you, the amount of revenue, but how will it impact the people they serve? Help them to begin to care about your customer, because no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day. There is a retreat coming up that I want you to know about. It's called the StoryPower Academy Retreat. This StoryPower Retreat is about focusing on your communication skills, taking them to the next level. Discover, develop, draft, deploy, and deliver some of the best stories you've ever learned. You're going to listen, create, connect, relax, and reflect around this beautiful lake scene in Granbury, Texas. It's a chance to rejuvenate and refresh and start over with some of the best training you can possibly imagine around storytelling, leadership, and communication. Join us, get away, and relax.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at StoryPowerAcademy.com for leadership.